employing people is, for anybody who's an entrepreneur will know, that is a very challenging experience.
And because I'm so sensitive, I'm a bit like a sponge. I just absorb everyone's energy. And when their energy wasn't great, it really affected my energy.
At the same time, you really want to look at cutting out all forms of anything that's going to change your brain chemistry. Hello and welcome to the show. Her name is
Ali Francis, and his name
is Stephen Conway. And today we're talking all things anxiety. Something that we both know a lot of over the years, both by running our own businesses, which in itself brings a lot of anxiety. But, you know, the anxiety of life, you just can't get, it's one of those things you cannot get away from. So, Ali, do you want to share any examples where you've had challenges with anxiety?
Yes, and there's been many. I think, as you just said, running a business always brings anxiety because there's always challenges in business. And I think one of my big challenges was staff when I was running a business, trying to manage people. And because I'm so sensitive, I'm a bit like a sponge. I just absorb everyone's energy. And when their energy wasn't great, it really affected my energy, and I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. This is going back many years, probably about 30 years now. I'm just talking about this one example. And I think you could probably relate to that as well, can't you, Stephen?
I do. I when I had my chocolate company, I employed 25 people. When I had my recruitment company, I had 10 people. Now I have my holiday cottages and I still employ 5 or 6 people. So I have, employing people is, for anybody who's an entrepreneur will know, that is a very challenging experience. You're either, quite a lot of the time, you're not spending time working on the business. You're spending time being a social worker or being an agony aunt or just having to deal with a difficult employee who has decided that their life is far more important than your business, which you understand to a certain extent, but when it becomes they take the mickey, which can happen, then it can be very challenging as a business owner, where you have got all of your life on the line, effectively.
I think. One of the things that I wish I knew then, what I know now, is actually how to employ the right people, how to employ the right people with the right values. Because years ago,
we should do an episode on that. What we've learned.
Yeah, we will. What we've learned, because we've both run businesses, we've both been entrepreneurs all our life, and I think we've probably got a lot of tips to offer and insights to offer to anyone who is out there thinking about building a business or in the midst of building a business. So yes, we'll definitely do that, won't we, Stephen? We
will. I think that will definitely help people. So, Ali, what's your first tip around anybody who is feeling anxious?
Okay, so I think anxiety is something that there's only 2 states of being, right? So you either feel expansive, there's expansion, or there's contraction. And when you feel anxious, it feels like everything's contracting. Your posture is getting smaller. You're getting smaller and you're going in and in and in into this rather unpleasant, vicious circle of thoughts that are taking you in and in and in, making you breathe shallow, making you feel terrible. So one of my tips, or that I'll be sharing today, is actually do something that makes you feel more expansive. For example, go out for a walk and put your arms out wide so you take a lot of space up with your body. Because when I'm teaching yoga and I'm getting people to take a lot of space up with their body and they're opening their body up, everyone says they feel amazing. Because you can't feel small and anxious when you're actually taking a lot of space up with your body. So my first tip is do something that is going to just open up the body. Even just put your arms out, go outside, look up, open the chest. That is so helpful, and it's one of the things I was doing this weekend. In one of my classes this weekend, I was getting people to open the chest, tying their chest up, feeling expansive, and I think that's one of the very important tips I can actually share is actually expansion. What about you, Stephen?
Well, I've got quite a few to share today because obviously I've experienced all of this. And so, but I think the first thing you need to do is get your physiology right, because I think anxiety is something that is quite challenging to deal with if you don't have your physiology right. And so what I mean by that is, number one, getting out and doing some exercise of any kind, whether that just be brisk walking, and deep breaths, but getting your heart rate up for a period of time. Go to a spin class, go to your gym and do some elliptical if you find that, running is a challenge on the knees, for example. Do something to get your heart rate up in the first instance, because the quickest way to deal with that kind of stress and anxiety is to get your heart rate up and get a bit of a sweat on. And then at the same time, you really want to look at cutting out all forms of anything that's going to change your brain chemistry. And that has to be sugar and alcohol, which I would say are probably the two main ones that can disrupt your ability to think straight. And I think if you do those two in combination, and then just add in just a better diet, the speed with which you can then find yourself in a better place is actually quite dramatic. So physiology is my first tip. Over to you.
Yeah, I think that's great. That actually falls into line with my first tip as well. Actually, expansiveness, movement, and being open. So my next tip is around the sense of smell. Now, you mentioned, Stephen, the other day how much you absolutely love Nag Champa incense. And I'd like to ask you, how do you feel when you smell the Nag Champa incense? Like, when you get a whiff of it, where does it take you?
It takes me to nice boutique style shops in faraway lands. It takes me to yoga sessions in beautiful places. And it's sort of got that sort of sense of the Oriental, that sense of India. So it sort of gives me that, just uplifts and makes the place feel more, dare I say it, upmarket, or it just feels like more sumptuous, I think probably is a better word.
Yeah, so basically your sense of smell is one of your most powerful senses. The human being can smell, I think it's about 1 trillion odours, right? And it's incredibly sensitive. It's almost... it's almost...
Might have to put up with most of those.
It's almost faster than you think. Well, it is faster than you think. Yeah. You get transported somewhere. So when you have a really lovely smell like the Nag Champa, or I use incense when I've got retreats going on, and the smell does some of the work for you. So if you're feeling very anxious, and I do this myself, I go, I just need to create the space. So I will make sure it's tidy, I'll light a couple of candles, and I will light some incense. And immediately that I get a whiff of that smell, it transports me into a completely different place. And I think you can't underestimate the sense of smell. So using things like essential oil burners, for example, you do have to be careful with synthetic smells, perfumes, by the way, just, so make sure they're natural and they're good quality. But honestly, if you have a smell that you think that transports you somewhere, like the nag champa for Steve, and actually it does that for me as well. But I also like sandalwood.
Oh,
Sandalwood just
sandalwood.
transports me. So the sense of smell, so use the sense of smell when you're feeling anxious. Light something that smells amazingly sumptuous, relaxing. So I think, over to you, Stephen, my dear.
Well, my next tip is one of your specials, which is get yourself to bed early. But added to that is when you get yourself to bed is to do a gratitude thought process. So now this is quite difficult when you are anxious to do this. So it does take a little bit of practice. And that is to, when you're lying in bed, is just think back to your day about anything that went well. Now that could be you had a nice call with a family member. It could be that you had a nice meal. It could be that, the bed is comfortable. It could be that you had a nice shower. It doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter how small it is just have a think about how grateful you are for having that in your life. Now, if you struggle with that, again, just think to yourself, how many people in the world would love to be where you are right now? Either people in captivity, people who are below the well-being and wealth amount, so people in poverty, people who are sick or who are dying, who would swap with you in an instant with all of the problems that you think that you have. And it doesn't really matter how big the problem is, because at the end of the day, what is more important is how you respond. And there is always a way to deal with stuff. There is always, I know this sounds quite difficult for some people who feel that they might be in a situation they can't get themselves out of. But I can promise you this, if I was able to tear back the veil of what the future holds, I promise you that there's going to be stuff in there that you would be really excited about, and it would transform where you are right now. And one way to start that transformation is just start being grateful for the little things that you do have in your life. A warm bed, nice food, the fact that you can taste, the fact that you can touch, the fact that you can think, the fact that you are free, the fact that you are, here on this planet and still alive. The challenges you have are not happening by mistake. They are happening to take your life to a new level through you learning something incredible. So that would be my next one. Over to you.
That's very nice, Stephen. Thank you for that. My next one is sort of in alignment with yours. It's about perspective. And I know that if I just change my perspective on something, it's really, really helpful. For example, if you're feeling like, you can cut this out and you can cut the pause out, and I'm just trying to think of an example. Anyway, okay, so let's think about business, and you're thinking that something is just not going to happen. Sometimes if you just take a step back and literally change your perspective and think, right, okay, I'm going to have 2 or 3 perspective pieces of paper on the floor. I'm going to step onto that piece of paper and I'm going to look at it through the lens of my future self. What would my future self say to me? And then I might move over to my other piece of paper and choose another perspective and look at the perspective of perhaps a teacher that I respect. And then I will come back to myself and then consider all the other perspectives, because I think what happens is that the nervous system and the mind is very good at telling stories. It is so good at winding you up and so good at futurizing. And I think if you can just change the perspective a little bit, think of how your future wise self would look at it, and think of maybe how one of your respected teachers would look at it. For example, what would the Dalai Lama say to me if I was asking him what he thinks? And what would my future self say when I'm asking my future self about this? So I think perspective is a really interesting thing to consider when we're right in the middle of it, and I've had to do that quite a lot lately myself.
Do you write that down? Do you journal on that? What do you do to
Yeah, I write down. I've got a diary that I write down things that I think of, things that I need to focus on, or things that I need to change my perspective on. And sometimes I actually do that before I go to bed, because I think that really helps with digesting it as you sleep, actually just getting out of your head, changing your perspective, because if you go to sleep wound up in your little world being smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, you definitely won't sleep. So I think changing your perspective is really helpful.
So my next tip is something that I find works for me and may not work for you, but it's like all these things, it's just worth trying. And that is, when I'm particularly stressed, I avoid eating. And the reason I do that, and I'll do it I do it on a Monday anyway, sometimes if I'm feeling good, I'll actually follow through and go through to a Tuesday. And what I find is that just resets everything. It resets my sleep. It resets my stress levels. And what happens is when I don't eat is basically my body goes into it feels like a healing mode, a cleaning out mode. And so what I tend to find, if I'm eating, and usually then there's some kind of sugar involved, or, high carb or something of that nature, then I'm using up quite a lot of my energy for digestion. And my digestion is not really as good as it could be when I'm that stressed. So when I fast, and I'm talking for, you can do it for a few hours. I do it for 24 hours. Just drink water. I find that it's amazing how quickly my body helps me to heal my thought processes. Because at the end of the day, really, the anxiety, what you need to deal with here is your thought process. It's your thought process that is the issue, and it's you thinking a little bit out of whack, as opposed to seeing things in perspective. And I find by fasting, it just really brings things back into perspective, and I just feel like the next day, I feel like, I've had a great night's sleep because I've not had anything to interrupt my digestion or interrupt my sleep. I've not got any food in the system. And then I wake up in the morning, it's like, wow, okay, I've suddenly got a whole new view on this, or I've got more energy with which to tackle it. Because at the end of the day, that is part of the issue, is when you are stressed, you don't have the energy or feel so tired to deal with it. If you were rammed with energy and feeling fantastic, your reaction to it is going to be a lot more, well, okay, it is a problem. Is it the end of the world? No. Can I deal with it? Yes. And I'm just going to work on it. So, but if you're tired, that's so much harder to feel in that kind of mindset. So fasting for me is a good one. Over to you.
Yeah, I think that's really a good one, because according to Ayurveda, when you're stressed, you should definitely not eat, because when you're in the fight or flight state, your energy that you would normally use for digestion is not in your digestive system. It's in your limbs, it's in your legs and your larger limbs, so legs and arms, and it's not in your digestive system. Therefore, when you eat and you're feeling nervous and you're feeling stressed, it's quite likely that you'll end up with indigestion. And also, as Stephen was saying, it's about energy. and you need an awful lot of energy to digest food. Why do you think you feel really tired when you've had a massive lunch? You really don't want to do anything else after you've had a massive lunch. It's because your body's digesting food. So I think that's a really good one.
So it is the end of this show. But however, I feel we should do another one on these, don't you?
I think we should, because so much more to say.
It seems like you've got more tips, and I've definitely got more tips.
Yeah, we've got more tips.
So in which case, we'll see you tomorrow with part 2. Thanks for joining us.